back from work. First day back on late it's been, so yeah. I'm not looking forward to the next week. Well, up until Christmas. I'm looking forward to Christmas, but so far it's been sort of a bit shat. It was cold and wet, and I was working. Fortunately, I only saw him for about 5 minutes, but working with a bloke I don't really like very much. He's a bit of a shit. This is my new character I built last night because I was a bit bored, and I was looking through my characters and I realised that I've gone right off of Red Lanterns, so I decided to make one loosely based on the Steve Ditko Creeper, which was a very peculiar character who laughed and was completely insane and could climb up walls and all sorts of stuff like that. A bit like Spider-Man in certain regards. This very good Star Trek game. I'm not usually an app game person, but I saw this advertised lots of times on YouTube videos, and it looked so good. I thought, oh, well, I'll give it a week, and that was about nearly 6 weeks ago. And I just play it and play it and play it. It's just really fun, and it's all of the Star Trek of the pre movie. You know, the J.J. Abrams car crash. I liked Star Trek Beyond, but the other two movies I really think kind of sucked. Gotta get rid of him. I keep getting Wesley crashes. It's really annoying because certain missions you unlock stuff, and it's all characters from the Next Generation, original series, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And I'm slowly collecting the Enterprise characters because I still haven't got to Pal, who is possibly the most hot woman ever on Star Trek. She was even sexier than Jerry Ryan. She had a particularly big round butt. But yeah, and oddly I got two Deanna Troys, but each of the characters, they have different abilities. It's kind of like playing the old Final Fantasy games, but I've got loads of characters. There are some as well I've got two versions of. I've got two Deanna Troys. One's from season 3, and one's from season 7. I got Geordie the other day. I've got two Dr. McCoys. I've got one from the original series and one from Star Trek Undiscovered Country, which is one of my favourite Star Trek films. Yeah, Nicholas Myers, well cool. I got two Daxes. I've got Jadzia Dax from, I think it's season 1 or 2 of DS9, and I've got Esri Dax, but it's not actually, it's the Mirror Universe Esri Dax. I got Jem Hadar, Odo, but it's the Mirror Universe Odo. I got Picard, Data season 2 Data, I think it is. Really, I want a season 5 or season 6. I've got 3 versions of Riker. I've got season 1, season 4, and the transporter accident Thomas Riker. I got Chekhov, Scotty, and you do get a lot of characters also from the movies. One of my favourites that I've got is Colonel Krug from Star Trek 3, the Search for Spock, because I really like him because he's a real nasty bad guy Klingon. Some of them I was really glad I just got at random, like Lita Alexander, not Lita Alexander, just Lita, isn't it? The Dubbo girl. Yeah, Dubbo girl Lita. I keep getting her mixed up with another Lita. I've got 7 of 9. I've got Seska before all her cosmetics started falling apart. So she just looks like a Bajoran. I had an original series Kirk, but I had to make room when I got another Kirk. So I deleted that one and got the newer one. I got Ensign Ogawa, who was in The Next Generation. She was mainly working in medical. I got Tuvok, who is my
Commander Tuvok, reporting for duty.
Well, cool. It's probably one of my. I actually like Tuvok more than Spock. I got Neelix. I've got 2 versions of Kez. Then you get other random characters. Like I've got 2 Hirojin. I've got the I can't remember what his name is. Groundskeeper Boothby, who was actually in the story involving Species 1472. I've got Chakotay.
Aye, Captain.
Commander Worf. Tasha Yar. You can get the Romulan Tasha Yar as well, but I haven't unlocked her yet. Dr. Phlox, who's my favourite Doctor out the whole series. Naomi Waldman. Who's this one?
Mayweather.
What Mayweather?
I'm a doctor, not an historian.
Dr. Bashir. And then there's other random characters like Simon Tarsis, who's from my favourite episode of The Next Generation, the Drumhead. I got Vedic Wynn, Laxana Troy, who is another of my favourite Next Generation. Well, she was very good in an episode of DS9 where her and Odo get stuck in a lift because there's a big power failure, and there's a really sweet moment because Odo has to become liquid once a day, because when he was shapeshifting at that time it was like tensing a muscle, and she lets him sit in her lap, and because he's quite an emotional being, and it's a very sweet episode. I can't remember which one it is though. Got Janeway.
Respond well to threats.
Yeah, I always like Catherine Janeway. I just wish she had better stories. Voyager became very episodic. In about the 4th season it really picked up, but the first 3 seasons weren't very good. There were certain stories I really like in the first 3 seasons, but there were a lot of them that were pretty slow, and you're thinking they're trying to get back to the Alpha Quadrant and they're getting involved with Kazon. I've got a Kazon. First Marge Hardon. I've got a Romulan. I've got Telik Amor, who was in an episode of Voyager. I think it was the first season, and he was communicating with them, and it turned out there was a time difference, but he died, so he couldn't alert the Federation. I got Captain Archer, who I'm another big fan of. I really like. I like all of the TV shows of Star Trek, but I've got a particular soft spot for Enterprise, mainly because it was a show without a safety net, especially the first 3 seasons. That all the other shows of Star Trek, they're part of a big federation, so if their ship got lost, someone had come and visit to find out what happened. But in Enterprise, they were it. Yeah, there's lots of random characters. It's a really good game. I strongly recommend. So, yeah, it's good. It's got a lot of classic show characters. Like I've got Ensign Chapel, who was Dr. McCoy's assistant. Got another one from the original series, or is it? Oh, here we go. Yeoman Rad, who also appeared in The Undiscovered Country as I think she was either the first officer or the science officer on the Excelsior with Sulu, and I got Captain Sulu. I haven't got the Sulu I really want's the one from The Undiscovered Country, but I haven't found it yet. But it's great. It's a bit like card collecting. But yeah, I don't normally go for a lot of mobile games because a lot of them are very expensive. But that one I've spent about probably £12 on it because sometimes you have to buy dilithium. But it's a really enjoyable game, and you got space battles as well. And it's you originally you start off with it's not Constitution, it's another class. It's basically what a Stargazer was. Anyway, oh, that's very loud. I'm doing the Gotham missions because the Creeper wasn't actually, when they made season 3 of Batman the Animated Series, which had some alterations that some of the fans didn't like. I wasn't too keen on what they did with.
We're trying to see if we can collect the basic injectors the hoppers carry.
With
Without that, the Venom can't enter their system.
Oh, what was it?
How about it?
They did alterations to the Joker, which I don't think really worked that well. It made him look a little bit weird. But one of the characters that popped up in a story was the Creeper, and they had the backstory that it was to do with the Joker poisoning him, that he becomes all his cells become immersed. And the funny thing about the Creeper as well in the comics was it was a little bit like a Jekyll and Hyde thing that just sort of appeared. It wasn't like something that was intentional. He sort of turned into this alternate ego, alternate personality whenever he was in trouble.
Without that, the Venom can't enter their system. How about it? Can you grab some?
This stuff's worth more. Get ready. You just made the last mistake of your life, fool. Say hello to Venom.
But I haven't got to iconic powers yet, but I'll probably give her the sonic blasts of
Smell fresh meat.
the canary.
This got nothing to do with it. I smell fresh meat.
Yeah, it's been a really boring evening. I've watched a lot of YouTube on my phone. I watched some streams have been a bit, and other ones have been a bit. There's a very funny one by Autopsy and oh god, what's his name? Well, I know him as Drucifer because I follow him on Twitter, but there's this this show called the Goddamn Podcast with Drew and well, he's called TJ, but he goes, his YouTube name is Coctopus Prime, and he's very funny, and he's one of the like first major movements of atheists on YouTube I really liked. I liked him because he's a bit like a broken jaw liberal, a bit like me, that, you know,
we got both Killer Croc
also
and Rightwing in the city
Dusty's the
tonight.
same,
Hey,
where
Croc's working muscle
we're
for the
liberal,
Falconians.
but we're
So
liberal.
between the freaky reptile and Batman's
We'll
show-off
beat you
fly
up if you get in our
Anybody
face
better
type
take
liberal.
down Bane
It's
first.
not, it's certainly not limp-wristed,
Yeah,
you know,
life's hard for us. He-Men. Hey,
eating salads,
anything
even though I
later
do
tonight?
eat a lot of salads now. Yeah, it's you know, I've had fights with skinheads. I've dealt with fascists, also Islamic fascists.
Take some samples for analysis.
Back when I went to Gay Pride in, I think it was in Soho, and a load of them were getting very sort of mouthy and threatening, and I just sort of stepped in the way and said, "Oi, fuck off, mate." You know, I do find that bullies will react that way sometimes, that if someone big steps in front, they'll suddenly
Vicky
back
Vale
off
exclusive.
because they're not confident
the feathered
anymore.
serpent is a
You
widely
know,
used
a
symbol
complete
of Bane's
stranger's come along
followers.
and said, "Oi, mate, fuck off." I've been part of unions and things like that in the past. Not so much an enforcer, but I did once cause a strike at the post office because it turned out that I wasn't going to be paid any annual leave because I'd only been with them like 4 months, and I didn't know at the time, I was pretty new to working, because the post office was actually my very first proper job. And the union rep, he saw me sitting in the canteen. He says, "Are you all right, Huey? What's the matter?" and all that. And I said, "Well, they're not going to pay me." And he went, "What?" And all of a sudden, he went out the room, and he's shouting all that. And I was like, oh, what have I done? And 20 minutes later, everyone who's in the union was out in the car park at the front, sort of saying, "We're having a wildcat strike. We're having a strike because one of our members is being mistreated by the management." And supposedly the management weren't supposed to be doing shit like that. So it turns out the company was trying to shaft me. And the management got very, very scared very, very quickly and decided to actually do the right thing. See, I'd like a society where unions would be unnecessary, but I've seen management, particularly in private firms that don't have unions, shafting the staff. You know, they need a pay cut or something like that, or they've decided that year that they need to save money, so they'll just fire people. And sometimes those people have been with the company like 10, 15 years, and they try and do it so they don't have to pay them any redundancy. It's fucking awful. Still, I'm hoping I might get redundancy next year.
Hey, it's Superman. The Watchtower's orbital perimeter sensors detected a spacecraft entering Earth's atmosphere. It crash-landed in
Still don't
Smallville,
like that
and
new
I'm concerned for the
Superman,
people
though.
there. Head over there and provide support for Dr. Weaver at Star Labs.
I think I'll switch weapons. acrobatics. Oh, I haven't got any. Oh. Because I've unlocked stuff already. I've got this green energy bludgeon that is really cool. It looks like sort of very Harley Quinn. I think I'm going to change the chest. But sorry, I'm burping. I ate a load of packs of watermelon earlier. It was very tasty stuff, but I think I wolfed it a little, and it's not painfully repeating on me, but you know, I should have chewed it more. It's a problem with my job. Sometimes you get tons of time when everything fucks up, but then you get days where you've got barely any time at all, and you've got to rush around like a fucking head case trying to get things done. Yeah, I'll go with the cowboy boots.
This stuff's worth more than
There you
you,
go,
bro.
much better hammer.
Hurry up! The cops are coming! Why, you...
Yeah, the hammer's definitely very Harley Quinn. Though I don't like the sexualised Harley Quinn. I know it was a result of the Batman Arkham games sexed up Harley, but I'm more of a fan of the classic goofy Harley from the cartoons.
Venom's a short-lasting steroid, not your typical street drug. Take some samples for analysis and get that venom off the streets.
Protect the stash!
But, you know, I can understand why they sexualised it for that pretty terrible
This stuff's worth more
Suicide
than
Squad
you, bro.
movie. You know,
Quick, get it to the left.
I watched it, and I thought I couldn't work out who it was for. I couldn't understand what tone they were trying to go for.
And now his gang is selling the stuff all
and
over
also,
the East End.
it wasn't very good.
Steroid,
I think
typical street drug.
my biggest problem
Take some
is
samples for analysis
that
and get that venom off the streets.
Will Smith just isn't Deadshot. You know, if they were going to do Deadshot, you need someone like Christopher Walken, not some happy-go-lucky guy.
Keep up their strength. See if you can find his main distribution center.
But I'm not a big fan of Will Smith, acting-wise anyway. It's quite funny. I remember there was a period where he got all pretentious and wanted to be taken seriously as an actor. You know, Sean Connery went through a similar phase many years ago. They're not. Him and Sean Connery have a lot in common, and Bruce Willis. They're not really actors. They're film stars. They don't really play characters who aren't sort of an extension of their personality. It's a bit like the difference between a wrestler and an actor. I know that The Rock has tried to do serious roles, but he's far better at doing the comedic stuff, because he was very comedic as a wrestler. You know, he was never scary. He wasn't a scary heel. He was quite a comedic heel. You know, I particularly liked his feud with Ken Shamrock, where he was constantly cheating. And he'd be punching him in the balls every chance he got. But then occasionally he'd have to tap out when Shamrock would get hold of his ankle. But yeah, quite a big fan of The Rock. I think it's because he's such a nice guy and he's so charismatic. You know, it's one of the reasons why I'm hoping that these rumours of him possibly running for president are true, because, you know, he's a pretty much self-made man. He's got a much better personality than Obama did. You know, I didn't have massive problems with Obama. His politics were very, very vague. And half the time I just wanted to see him get angry once, but he never did it. You know, he should have got more angry and defend and argued his case better. But you know, he just didn't. I think partly it was from fear that he didn't want to be sort of considered the first black president who basically makes all black presidents afterwards cringe, you know, by having the angry black man
it's like fire in my veins.
Burden on him. But you know, out of the two, I liked his wife more. His wife seemed pretty feisty,
I swear.
and not taking any bullshit. And she had people saying horrible things about her, and she didn't bat an eyelid. So yeah, I was quite impressed with her, especially when the Republicans were saying incredibly crazy things.
It's got nothing to do
Like,
with
you know, how her wanting children to actually eat sensible food was somehow Marxist propaganda. And I'm like, so having children not become obese, what? Still, a lot of what Republicans say leaves me going, what? You know, it's like,
I smell combat.
you know, if you want any evidence that Trump doesn't give a flying fuck about working people,
I didn't do anything.
I found online today, I heard something about it. I looked online, and
Tell me anything.
he's put for a bill that basically allows owners of restaurants to take the staff's tips. I'm like, how? What?
This is crazy. Coming in here like that.
So people who have
Supposed to make me
broken their
invincible.
backs to make sure people's orders are in,
Just don't tell Ben I
and
told
the
you.
person who they're giving the food to decides to give them a gratuity, because I usually do it if I get good service. So I go to a sort of Italian restaurant called Frankie and Benny's, and if they're very nice, I give them sort of well, the most I've ever given a girl was £7, because she was very nice and helpful, and she didn't leave me waiting around, because I said, you know, I'm going to the cinema, because the cinema is just upstairs from the restaurant. And you know, I said that, you know, I'm sort of in a hurry, so, you know, if you see the plate's empty, can you bring me the bill? And she went, oh, no, yeah, it's great.
We've been
fine.
tracking Bane's distribution
problem.
system through Gotham.
And
They've made me as
so
a
I
cop,
gave
and
her a
you
nice
could get
big
through and
tip,
check out the...
because I like punctual service. I don't like being sort of left in the air. Now, where am I? Oh, there we are. Oh, I had that horrible feeling I'd end up falling through the floor or something.
Hey, you.
Yeah, this hammer's got a bit of distance to it. But yeah, this idea that an employer can take money from a person who is doing service is evil.
Ow, that really hurt.
You know, it's a sort of kick in the
You
teeth.
just made the last mistake of your life.
Well,
fool.
the whole tax thing that's come through. You know, the only people who are going to benefit from this new tax thing. What's this? Scott McInnes, how are you, Pofit? Oh, okay. Tip over and enjoy. Oh, I overtip because I enjoy the reaction, even if I'm poor. Yeah, I'll if I get good service, I'll give them a tip. But to put in a bill that basically shafts the working class, I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, what sort of leadership's that? Especially since it was mostly working class people who got Trump in the White House. I'm like, Jesus Christ, didn't he actually think, you know? Still, it's like this tax thing. There's certain things that you shouldn't fuck around with because it'll upset your voter base. And, you know, if the screwing up taxes, so especially this bullshit about trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics has never worked anywhere in the world. The first country to have it as a test was Chile back in the 1970s when Pinochet took over. The CIA went in with a load of technocrats and tried to create a technocrat sort of hub, and it backfired badly, and it ended up with Pinochet basically forming his own form of the mafia and killing about 500,000 people. The speciality was taking people up in a Hercules aircraft over the ocean, just dropping them out the back so they'd fall in the ocean. You know, and then the bodies would never be found. But, oh Jesus, some of the evil stuff Pinochet did. And his secret police, that they would purposely make female prisoners pregnant and then take away the babies to break them. And it was just like, you know, the most nightmarish evil shit. You know, sort of stuff Saddam Hussein used to. Have you ever heard about the
like you could use
hot
some
foot?
help.
The hot foot was something that
just like
is
Babe
popular
broke her
in
back.
the Middle East. That they do to political dissidents, where they basically cook the bottom of your feet with a blowtorch, and then they won't bandage it or anything. It ends up crippling people. And yeah, they're basically in their cell with no soles to their feet anymore. And it's not just popular in Iraq, it was popular in Iran and also Saudi
You got
Arabia.
lucky, punk. That's all.
It's pretty sick people about. It's like Bolivia had a lot of really evil stuff. You ever heard of a Bolivian telephone wire? It's basically they get a plug cable. They shave off the wires, stick them to a part of your body with sellotape, and then they put the plug in the wall, and it electrocutes you. And they do it to different parts of the body. Yeah.
I thought one Bane was bad, but with Venom on the street, everyone thinks they're a backbreaker. Good to know you're out there taking care of it.
Yeah, it does. The graphics look a little bit sort of last gen, but it's I like it because it's got flow to it, and because it's DC, it's got all the history of the DC universe.
So Bane's thugs need a constant
also, when you
supply
can
to
team
keep up
up
their
with
strength.
other people.
See if you can find his main distribution center. And convince Bane's main distributor to find some other means of employment.
Don't know why they've changed the art thing for Batman as well. Because it doesn't look like the Batman from the films. It looks more like 1960s Batman.
Destroy it. When Bane's hopped up thugs object, take them out and detach their venom injectors for their own good.
People can be so lack of empathy. Well, psychopathia, it's strange, is a predatory instinct that most humans must have had at some point. But when we became a pack animal, we lost that psychopathic ability. Because if you're a tiger and you're a lone predator, you certainly wouldn't have empathy for your prey because you'd never eat anything. But you know, tigers, male tigers will eat other tigers young. You know, if the head of a pride of lions changes, the male will eat all of the baby lions from the previous alpha. So what makes me laugh when people go on and on about alpha males in, you know, some people can be sort of, you know, physically stronger, but they're not alpha males. Alpha males, most of the time, they only appear when you've got animals in captivity. So really, if you're saying you're an alpha male, you're basically being the top dog in prison. You don't get it in society. You can have someone who's brainy, but that's not being alpha. Also, alpha males have a tendency to rape the other males. Or they'll single out a male and rape them in front of everyone else, and that's what makes them alpha. It's a very weird thing. Chimpanzees do it that way. They will single out a male, usually smaller than the rest, and abuse, sexually abuse and injure, sometimes to the point of dying, just to show how strong they are to the rest, because no one else wants to get involved. No one else wants to be the victim. So yeah, it's something to remember when someone goes, "I'm alpha," and you're like, "Are you?" You know, it's like, so you go around anally raping other men.
Venom's wearing off.
But yeah. Alpha males don't rape females either. The concept of an alpha male in a pride is that he's bigger and stronger than the rest, and that'll attract females towards him.
Because the venom is mine.
It's amazing that it's something that's developed mostly in mammals. It didn't develop in reptiles.
Get off of me!
And amphibians. But rats, if you put 2 male rats in a cage with, say, 7 females, they will initially sniff the males. You'd have to put them in one at a time, or the 2 males would start fighting each other. But if one of them's got cancer, the females won't touch him. They've got like a sort of sense of that if a male's ill, they won't breed with
If we
it.
smash you, we can keep your stuff.
But it's pretty amazing evolution.
Don't take
People just
away the
don't
venom.
understand evolution because they're looking at it from
The Falcone
the wrong
crime
sort of
syndicate
time
has ruined
frame.
this neighborhood. These Bane thugs are an improvement, you ask me. There's some Falcone hoods just south of
Yeah,
here.
now for male
Show them we've
subjugates
got a
other
hero on our
males.
side, will you?
A mob boss would pretty much be an alpha male, but the problem is if you're the alpha male, you've also got to stay in charge, which means you've got to be watching your ass every 5 minutes.
You're on our turf now.
It's something that comes out of the territoriality of human beings.
That really hurt.
You know, people don't understand that.
I don't need
People
any
seem
help.
to think that gorillas are our closest relative. They're not actually, and neither are chimpanzees. There's a type of chimpanzee called bonobos that share a lot more of the personalities of human beings. It's weird as well because bonobos, the leader of the group, is actually the female. It's the mother usually of all the other males, and bonobos.
The venom is mine.
It's an interesting experiment. If you put a group of regular chimpanzees in a cage and put a box in it, the regular chimpanzees will fight over the box. If you put a box in a cage full of bonobos, they'll have sex on top of the box. Because they're pretty much... They stay together as a group through sex. And it's weird that also the first lesbian sexual activity was seen in bonobos.
Even with their distribution hub down,
so you know, also orangutans have been known to go off sort of male to male,
and detach their venom injectors,
because they have to go and look for females because they don't live in a pack.
To venom, but he's no fool.
They have similarities to how human beings must be, in that they're sort of a nomadic animal that moves through the forest looking for new food supplies.
Bane can be deadly.
But human beings at one point must have done a similar thing.
Is full of that
That's how we ended up
venom.
in the savannas.
Just the smell makes me sick. Clear it out and I'll make it worth your while.
The strangest evolutionary factor that gives human beings our major difference, our ability to have bigger brains, is actually to do with muscles. It's not to do with brain power at all. It's a defective gene in our genome that would have produced a muscle going right over the top of our head connected to our jaw that all the other great apes have. And they can break nuts. They can take up a walnut and put it in a nut because the muscle on top of their head levers down with a jaw action. But we don't have that. We've got weaker jaws. That's why we still have wisdom teeth. But that genetic mutation gave us enough to grow the frontal cortex of our brain, which enables us to imagine an object before it's been built. And it's something... Other animals have discovered tools, but there's been no evidence yet of them being able to foresee something before it's been made. It's also interesting where language came from. I watched a whole documentary about how they believe now that language developed from hunting, because you need to signal to the other males, because it'd be males hunting game and the females would be doing what's known as grazing the land, basically looking for small food supplies, because they'd have to look after the young. But the males, if they were doing teamwork, you'd need to be able to signal over a distance to another male, say if you're stalking prey, or if you're walking and all of a sudden the wind changes, because being an animal, you're not going to be very clean, and your scent can be picked up by herbivore animals. It's one of the reasons why herbivores have their eyes on the sides of their head, like deer and goats and all sorts of things like that, is because it gives them a complete circular sight around them, the predators, and their vision's based on movement. Yeah. And a lot of herbivores have got black and white eyesight. They don't see in colour. But, yeah. It's funny, insects, there's more insects with colour vision than mammals. Particularly winged insects like bees and hornets. But bees only see in two colours. They only see in yellow and red. But that's another interesting thing, because when you look at flowers, if you look through the spectrum of the bee's eyes, it becomes completely obvious the colours and dimensions of the flowers. But that's because I went to agriculture college, studied all this stuff. But plant life, people seem to go, oh well, the sunflower, the bees like the sunflowers, so the bees must have chosen the sunflowers. But what people don't understand from an evolutionary standpoint is they haven't seen the 200 generations of the same plant that died off because they couldn't get the bees to be attracted to them enough. It's why the time frame thing. I can understand why people like the idea of Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and all that, but it's a story, and it's not a very good story. There's a lot of holes in it. Like, where did all the water go? The silt level alone, if you poured water into a large area, it would knock off all the topsoil, which would kill all the plant life, because it'd kill all the bacteria in the soil that produce the enzymes that plants need to grow. So, you know, there wouldn't be, even if the flood suddenly went down, there wouldn't be the enzymes in the soil to produce plant life anymore. Besides, the one thing why Noah's Ark doesn't make any sense at all to me is, if God can create a world in 7 days, what does he need to create a flood for? And kill all those life forms? Why doesn't he just make another Earth? You know, I think the best description of how silly Noah's Ark is was by the comedian Eddie Izzard. He said it's the Etch-a-Sketch end of the world. That, you know, you build, you make a little castle, and then you do something wrong and you go, oh, sod it, and you'd shake it and it'd go all clean again. But yeah, a lot of Noah's Ark just doesn't make. Noah's Ark is clearly a story. Well, the current belief is that it was sort of true that the Nile Delta would flood, and that possibly a farmer put all his livestock in a barn, and he put the barn on a set of logs, so the water would raise and the barn wouldn't move anywhere, and he had all his animals inside. Then the waters would go down again, and that story was embellished more and more and more and more, till you end up with it being the entire world and 2 of every animal, even though that doesn't make any sense, because not all animals breed with pairs. Particularly, there's a lot of well, there's not a lot now, but a lot of early animal life, particularly frogs and geckos and things like that, were asexual. That at one point in the genetics of
I'm taking you
well,
down.
not even humans,
For Bane!
long before humans. Most of the life forms in the ocean were asexual. They would they wouldn't need
What gives?
you know, the eggs and the sperm and all that. They just have babies naturally. A bit like there's certain plants that are asexual. Oh, as I put in the description, I saw possibly the most crazy review of the new Star Wars film
Almost there. Bane's just
on
around the corner.
YouTube earlier. I watched some pretty good ones. The Angry Joe one was a bit predictable, you know, him shouting and screaming as per usual. He never seems to be happy about anything. And the Red Letter Media one was quite funny and pointed out a lot of the plot holes with the whole new Star
Hey,
Wars
so Batman
thing.
sent you in.
So I really
Good
liked
Let's show these guys we don't need their
Star Wars
stinking
8. I
venom
like
to beat
parts
them
of
down.
Star Wars 8 to be more precise. There were problems I had with it, but you know, at least it wasn't like a carbon copy like the last one of A New Hope. At least it tried to do something new. But I think my biggest problem was why did they need all of the secondary stories? Why didn't they just focus on you know, Luke and Rey and Kylo Ren? Even though the ending is really cool, that was the thing that really saved it for me. Was Mark Hamill is absolutely brilliant in this. Carrie Fisher was pretty good as well, but of the reviews, the one to look for, because it's so jaw-droppingly insane, is the one by Stefan Molyneux. It goes off into cloud cuckoo land. I think part of me thinks that he added all of this shit into it about white genocide because he knew that Star Wars is popular, therefore people are going to look at his Star Wars video. But the stuff he was saying,
Good job,
he said
hero.
that
I'll take care of Bane.
the
Thanks for the
planet
assist.
at the end, which is a mineral-rich planet.
Sometimes I wonder why I stay in
Initially, when I first saw the trailers, for oh, it's snow, it's like off, but it's not. It's salt, and it's sort of a thin layer of baked salt on the surface, and oh hello, and underneath it's red. Similar to if you go to Russia, there's salt mines, and it looks orange, but it's basically just the pigmentation of the salts reacting because salts become crystalline, and they absorb whatever's in the soil. So there's iron in the soil, so the salts become red, a sort of blood red thing. And Stefan Molyneux thought this meant that the planet was in fact white people, and this symbolised it's white with a red core,
Vicky
therefore
reporting.
it's white skin
Xochipilli
with
is
blood.
frequently depicted by street artists.
And it signalled to the viewer that this story was actually about white genocide, and I was like, "What?" I was on the train trying to sort out a huge crowd of people. I'd sorted out their destination, and I had to do a little bit of cleaning, tidying up the train for them. And I'm listening to this in one ear, and he says that, and I was like, I physically had to stop what I was doing because it was so crazy. I'm like, it's a Star Wars movie. I could understand if this was like a political movie or a movie by, say, Oliver Stone, but it's a Star Wars movie.
Bane's addicted to venom, but he's no fool.
He's mental. I'm sure the bloke is. There's something wrong with him mentally.
Behind the light.
Grapple line
Nightwing's
attack,
inside,
rocket assisted
but no
glide.
one should try to
I'll
take out
use that
Bane
one.
alone. Bane can be deadly. Believe me, I know.
Right, let's get up on that building and leap off.
Bane's addiction is his weakness. I'll speak to Dr. Tompkins about rehab possibilities. In the meantime, he'll stay in custody. Meet Batman at the safe house.
I'm
I'll have
flying.
further missions for you soon. Batman out.
Oh, there we go. It just means that you move across the map faster. Yeah, I got the back cable thing. Just makes it easier to get up buildings. Oh, I can hear it. See it. Right. It's gone past it. Aha! There you are. It's useful picking these
hey
things
kids,
up.
This is Booster Gold. I don't need drugs to have superpowers, and neither do you. Villains like Bane think Venom makes them strong, but steroids just make you weak. So remember, Booster says, stay gold. Stay away from Venom.
This message brought to you by the Martha Wayne Foundation.
The whole white genocide thing, I read about it years ago because there was a whole thing in the UK back in the early I think it was about 2003 with a group called the BNP, and they were trying to drum up a lot of racial hatred, particularly in the Midlands, that have got an Asian population. And a lot of them are second generation, you know, they're not like first generation. But it's the first time I heard anything about white genocide. And this idea that other societies are going to outbreed us. But it's twaddle. If you read the World Health Organization website, birth rates across the globe are dropping, not just in the West, they're dropping everywhere because people nowadays have things like technology, the World Wide Web. Pornography has been a major thing why men aren't going home and having sex with their wives all the time, because they really don't need to. You know, they can just watch Pornhub.
Anything in particular you're interested in purchasing today?
It's actually had a slightly effect because some people are so into porn that they're not actually having sex at all with their wives. Some blokes they're like MGTOWs. They basically don't have any sex at all, so their genes aren't being carried on at all. But it's not a replacement. A replacement would suggest that there was some sort of sinister undertaking, that it was all planned to oh, hello, that looks nice. Christmassy. Yeah, it was all a big plan to replace white people in the West, and it's not. It's the result of technology. Technology is the thing that's altering the dynamics of the family and all that. It's not a conspiracy. still. The other thing that's a bit about the whole white genocide thing is my dad used to talk a lot about
purchasing today?
The Jewish conspiracy. My granddad was a real anti-Semite, but my dad sort of picked up some of that, mainly through, you know, being the son of a real anti-Semitic bloke. Well, I used to call him Grandad at Oxford because they lived in Oxford. But he used to get the Jewish newspapers and look in them for codes and things, and it was a bit, you know, at the time I didn't really realise how bonkers most of it. Oh, hello. Ah, that's a nice costume. Looks like Mr. Freeze. I didn't really understand all the bonkers stuff because I was just a child. But years later, when I started reading about it, you know, I'm totally against genocide of any kind. I had a very dear friend called Michael who, well, he killed himself. And it was a result of actually seeing a genocide. He was
You've
part of
survived
the UN,
Scarecrow and Bane. I can only imagine what Gotham will throw at you next.
peacekeeping
Good to have
force
you on
in
the team.
Bosnia, and he saw he saw the results of massacres.
I'm Booster Gold, and this is the Booster Gold Exploration Adventure Series. This adventure will take you to Gotham's notorious East End, one of the most dangerous areas of the city.
And it wasn't. The Christian groups were attacking other Christian groups, also killing Muslims and killing Jewish communities. Because basically what happened with Bosnia was, once the Cold War came down, the USSR ended, there was a power vacuum, and the groups who disliked the Russians suddenly disliked their neighbours because, you know, they became paranoid of who was in charge, and a lot of the old hatreds,
Heads up, there's trouble in the Tomorrow District.
religiously
Circe's
linked
bestiamorphs are
hatreds
all
all
over
of a
the
sudden
area, which
popped
means
up.
Circe can't be far behind.
And
Zatanna in the Chinatown safe house can give you further instructions.
Load out. Switch. Which one? I'll get rid of that one.
Oh my God!
Frame Star's a bit
something.
useless. They started killing each other because of the power vacuum.
Look out!
Because there wasn't any USSR anymore, and lots of communities that were, you know, if one community was Christian, and oh, I've got a baseball bat. Cute. If it was like a Catholic community being killed, the Catholics had joined together and attack a Protestant community or a Muslim community, and it turned into a bloodbath really quickly. And my mate told me about the day that he fell to pieces. Oh, it looks like Moon Knight. Yeah. He said that, you know, it was the day that he couldn't, that the person he was just sort of died, and he became sort of this mess that he was for the rest of his life until he topped himself. But it was that they went into a village and they couldn't find any people, and they went into the main sort of town square of this that was like a sort of temple.
Amazon forces,
and they noticed all the doors had been boarded up
but more
and
help
nailed
is needed.
shut.
Get down there and stop Circe.
He said that they were looking around and all the glass had been knocked in. And the sight he saw inside, when they finally managed to get inside, they got crowbars and pulled the boards out. He said that this was the middle of summer and it was like 80 degrees in the shade. These bodies must have been in there for like about a week. What had happened was they boarded up all the doors. They'd taken the entire population of Muslims, forced them into this building, nailed the doors shut, stuck machine guns through the windows and just sprayed the entire room full of machine gun bullets. And the doctor they had, the medic bloke they had there, said that if they'd come there about maybe 2-3 days earlier, some of the people would have probably still been alive, because there were people who were injured and they basically died of dehydration.
Santa Claus?
So, you know, it's when people talk about genocide, they really, you know, genocide is really disgusting. It's not
Foul
it's not
souls
like
walk among us. Their
sort of all
souls
labour
crying out
camps.
for freedom.
The genocides in Bosnia and in the former Czechoslovakian, the Serbo-Croatia, places like that, all these countries that have had wars, especially the Ukraine recently, you find what the sheer savagery of what goes on. The UN aren't going to go and tell people, because it's more disturbing than, you know, the Nazis. You know, they basically engineered murder. Because, well, the reason why they created the death camps, it's quite interesting, is because of the psychological damage actual soldiers were suffering using the older method of getting rid of Jewish people. Was basically they'd line them up in a field after digging a big hole, machine gun them, and then just stick them in the ground and put the dirt over the top, and it was making the soldiers go insane. You know, the realisation that, you know, they couldn't carry on doing it, so they created the factory system of the death camps for that reason. It's odd as well, because at one point one of the plans for the entire Jewish population was to stick them all on the German colony of Madagascar, which is that big island next to Africa. So, you know, Israel could have been in Madagascar at one point, but because of the war, they couldn't ship the human beings over that sort of distance. So instead they went for the cheaper alternatives, which basically killed about 5 million people. It's like the gas that they originally used wasn't Cyclone B. They used car exhaust.